my. Catherine, can you talk on the phone? I heard your house was completely burned down and you were taken to the hospital. Sounds like you got some serious burns on your face, huh? Are you okay talking? I received a call from my mother-in-law while I was in the hospital. I live in the same house with my husband's parents. After the fire, my mother-in-law called me, and she seemed almost happy as she said, "Is the baby in your belly okay?" I was about to say that I was out and safe when she continued, "Oh, maybe you can't reply? Well, that makes sense with your face burned that bad, huh?" My mother-in-law let out a soft chuckle. "It'll be a pity for the baby to be born to a mother who looks like a melted monster. The baby might be scared and dislike you, don't you think?" She spoke with a smirk, and it didn't sound like she was concerned at all. As I tried to respond to her harsh words, she said something unimaginable. "Maybe it's better if the baby isn't born." "Catherine, thank you. Thanks to you sacrificing yourself, it looks like my long-held dream will come true. Even after you leave the hospital, don't come back to our home. A monster as a daughter-in-law is a disgrace to the Johnson family." With that, she hung up abruptly. Sacrificed? A long-held dream? I had a very bad feeling about this. If my hunch was right, my mother-in-law might have committed a serious crime. To find out the cause of the fire and the true meaning behind her mysterious words, I decided to devise a plan involving my family. My name is Catherine Johnson, 29 years old. I moved in with my in-laws at the same time I got married. Before marriage, I was a preschool teacher. My husband is 10 years older than me out of 39, and is a teacher at elementary school. We met at a matchmaking party. Considering our jobs, there aren't many opportunities to meet people. Plus, as you can see, I'm a bit on the heavier side, so I'm not exactly attractive for the ladies," he said, chuckling. His gentle expression left a good impression on me. It was my mother-in-law who strongly wished for us to live together, which I was naturally okay with it. There are many teachers in my husband's family lineage, including his father and grandparents, who were middle school teachers. I also had a certificate to teach at elementary school, so I think that endeared me to my in-laws. Moreover, my family runs a small hotel back in Nebraska, and my mother had the same mindset as my mother-in-law. She would always tell my brother, who is the heir to the family business, that he should live with my parents once he gets married. Having witnessed that, I figured that's just how things are done, especially for the eldest son. Bob often asked, "Are you sure about this?" But I didn't have anything to oppose to. "Bob, once we're married, I'm thinking of quitting my job and helping out my family's business. It's an hour's drive from here, but there are no fixed working hours, and they even said they'd pay me. Plus, I can take care of my parents at the same time." "That sounds good. We should take care of our parents while we can." "Thanks. I'll be leaving late and come back home early, so I think I'll be able to handle the housework just fine." "Don't worry about that. With Mom around, everything will be taken care of." Thus, it seemed our married life had started off peacefully. Once we started living together, my mother-in-law began giving me specific instructions regarding household chores. Usually, she's calm and collected, but when it comes to housework, her face becomes stern, as if she's a different person. And if I didn't complete the tasks she set, she'd give my arm a sharp smack with a thin wooden ruler. I once resisted, saying, "Please stop." But she replied softly, "This is how the Johnson family does things. I was raised the same way. This has been passed down from our ancestors. Once I'm gone, it'll be your turn to keep this tradition." My mother-in-law's eyes were vacant as she spoke, and I found myself at a loss for words. She didn't just randomly throw shade or harass for no reason. I found that even more frightening. I'd get up at 5 a.m. to prepare meals and do laundry and cleaning before heading off to help at my family's business. By 4 p.m., I'd finish work and start preparing dinner by 6 p.m. My days went on like this. "Catherine, I noticed the 4 corners of the staircase were dusty. Please make sure you clean thoroughly." "I'm sorry. I'll make sure to give it a thorough clean this weekend." Oh, while you're at it, could you also clean the windows and pull the weeds in the garden? I'm sorry, but Bob and I have plans that day, so I might not be able to do it all at once. In that case, why don't you clean the staircase now and do the weeding first thing tomorrow morning? Then on Sunday, you can just focus on the windows. My mother-in-law always found things for me to do around the house. I had to do things like waxing the floor, cleaning the moss off the outside walls, and weeding the driveway, many of which required a lot of physical effort. And while I was working, my mother-in-law would silently observe me from the sidelines. Although I occasionally had to leave to assist with my family's business, I tried my best to adhere to my mother-in-law's wishes. But her incessant pursuit of perfection wore me down. My husband and I would talk every night before bed, but I couldn't bring myself to tell him about being hit with the ruler. My husband always looked out for me and would step in if he felt my mother-in-law was overstepping. While it seemed like my mother-in-law didn't care about his interventions, knowing that my husband was on my side brought me much relief. Hey, since Catherine's here now, have you considered renovating the house? Well, I'm already retired, and I'm not keen on taking on a mortgage at this stage. Bob, what do you think? I'm hoping for kids in the future, and that's going to cost money. I haven't really thought about the house right now. But this house is so old. Catherine must be uncomfortable in such an aged place. As for me, I'll follow whatever decision Bob makes. From the moment Bob and I got married, my mother-in-law often talked about renovating the house. When it was just the two of us, she'd often ask, "Can you talk to Bob about it for me?" I can understand where my mother-in-law was coming from. My in-laws' house was located just off a main road and set back even further from that side street. It was quiet but somehow had a dim and gloomy atmosphere. The house was old-fashioned, with a living room to the left of the entrance, a kitchen down the hall, and two traditional rooms across from it. To the right of the entrance was a steep set of stairs, with a restroom underneath, and upstairs there were another traditional room and a bedroom. I sometimes wonder if things would have been different had we listened to my mother-in-law from the start. If we'd planned on renovating the house from the get-go. Perhaps a different future awaited us. About a year and a half after we started living together, I found out I was pregnant. My husband and my in-laws were thrilled, and we were full of happiness. As soon as my pregnancy was confirmed at the hospital, morning sickness kicked in. You rest until you feel better. I'll take care of the chores. You might want to avoid the stairs, you can use the living room. She said. Thank you. Even though I started spending more time downstairs, I couldn't truly relax whenever I thought my mother-in-law was in the room next door. My morning sickness got so bad I couldn't eat, and as I started to lose weight, my husband suggested going back to my parents' home. I spent about 2 months there and returned to my in-laws' home once I entered my second trimester. Are you sure it's okay to move around now? Yes, I'm going to help with the housework again. Catherine, you're so lucky. Your parents and husband take such good care of you. My own mother-in-law was a nightmare until she passed away. My husband didn't bother much about it. My mother-in-law started living in this house with Bob's grandparents when he was 8. It seemed she had a tough time with Bob's grandmother. Maybe it was because my mother-in-law was the only one in the house who wasn't a teacher. As I passed the 7-month mark, my belly became noticeably larger. Climbing the stairs became terrifying again. I was careful, but one day I slipped and fell down the last 3 steps. There was some bleeding, but the baby was fine, and we breathed a sigh of relief. Hey, have you thought about moving before the baby comes? This house isn't really baby-friendly. My husband's proposal took me by surprise. Even though he had never left his parents' house since becoming an adult. He had made up his mind to be a responsible father for our unborn baby and me. I was so touched by his feelings. Over the weekend, he brought it up after dinner. Dad, Mom, we're thinking of renting a place close by. I think it's dangerous raising a child in a 2-story house. Yeah, the stairs are pretty steep. If you guys live nearby, I have no problem with you moving out. At that moment when we felt relieved by my father-in-law's words, my mother-in-law screamed. No way! You can't move out! If you're moving, we all have to move together. We are a family. Just like you value our family, I want to prioritize my family with Catherine and our child. So you're leaving me behind? Why not just renovate this place? You're all I have. You're my only support. My mother-in-law was being hysterical. My father-in-law calmed my mother-in-law down, urging us to go upstairs. Even after we went up, we could hear my mother-in-law's agonized cries, but it soon became quiet. Maybe my father-in-law's words got through to my mother-in-law because she stopped speaking after that. We kept checking out listings online and visited several during my husband's days off. By the time I was 9 months pregnant, we finally settled on a spacious apartment nearby. It had an elevator, so it'd be easy to move around once the baby is born. Our moving day was set for 2 weeks later. An incident occurred just before the move. That day, my father-in-law went fishing, and my mother-in-law had plans to go on an overnight trip to a spa with her sister. My husband was at work, and I was at home without any appointments. Around noon, when the house was empty, my cell rang. It was my brother. "I'm in town for some work. Can we meet? I have something I want to discuss with you." "That's unusual." "Well, I'm free today. If you're gonna treat me to lunch, I might just take you up on that." "I'll treat you. Let's meet at the diner near the station." After hanging up, I quickly got ready. As I was slowly descending the stairs, I heard the front door open. It was my husband, looking pale as a ghost. "Don't come near me. I'm feeling really chilly and came home early. There's a flu going around at school." "Are you okay?" "I'm about to meet my brother. Should I cancel?" "No, it's better for you to go. It's too risky to stay with me. And when you come back, don't come upstairs." "Got it. Just take a rest. I'll pick up some Gatorade or something on my way back." I left, worried about his condition. Turned out, my brother wanted to talk about his plans to marry. He's living at parents' homea and working at a hotel. He mentioned he didn't want to live with our parents anymore as long as they are healthy. While brainstorming how to convince our mother, a call came in from our friendly neighbor. "Catherine? Oh my God! Your house is on fire! You need to get back ASAP!" I jumped up in shock and dashed out of the diner. There was a crowd gathered around my home. Smoke billowed out of my in-laws' house, and flames reached the sky. "Help! My husband's upstairs sleeping." I tried calling my husband's cell multiple times on the way, but couldn't get through. Pushing through the crowd, I saw the second floor, where my husband was, engulfed in flames. I was too stunned to speak and just collapsed to the ground, crying. One firefighter approached. "Ma'am, do you live that house?" I nodded vigorously. "We've rescued one male from the house. He's got burns and is being taken to the nearby general hospital." "Was there anyone else inside?" "It was just my husband." I covered my face with my hands. My brother, who'd followed me, drove me to the hospital. On the way, we tried contacting my father-in-law and mother-in-law, but couldn't get through. Sitting in the hospital waiting room with my brother, a man in a suit approached us. "Are you a relative of Mr. Johnson?" "I'm with the police, and we'd like to discuss the fire." "Yes." "Where were you when the fire started?" "My brother called me earlier in the day, and we were at a diner near the station." "By the way, what caused the fire? Was it arson? There've been some small fires in the neighborhood recently." "Well, we can't say for sure yet. But it seems the fire started in the bedroom at the back of the second floor where your husband was." "He came home early because he was feeling sick. I think he might have left a heater on." "An electric space heater?" "Once your husband's conscious, we'll need more details." With that, he hurried off. My stomach was feeling tight, perhaps due to my anxiety. As I was rubbing my belly, someone called out. "Catherine! Are you okay?" Looking up, I saw my father-in-law standing there. "I got a call from one of the neighbors, and I drove back home as fast as I could. I'm so relieved you're okay." Seemingly drained, he sat down heavily next to me. When I got to the house, I saw an ambulance and heard someone was taken. Then I checked my phone and saw a bunch of missed calls from you. Thought maybe it was an emergency call. It scared me.
My father-in-law was crying with his head stooped down.
Bob came home early because he felt sick. But we couldn't get in touch with my mother-in-law either.
As I was explaining everything to a shocked father-in-law, my phone rang. It was from my mother-in-law.
Oh. Catherine, you can answer the phone? I heard from a neighbor that house was burned down and you were taken to the hospital. They said you had severe burns on your face. Can you even talk?
My mother-in-law sounded like she was in a noisy place, speaking loudly. Her voice even seemed oddly cheerful.
Is the baby in your belly okay?
I tried to say that I was outside and safe, but she continued.
Oh, can't you reply? Of course, with that burned face.
My mother-in-law let out a small chuckle. My mother-in-law seemed like a completely different person than her usual calm personality.
It would be so pitiful for the baby to be born with a mother looking like a melted monster. I bet it would be scared and repulsed.
My mother-in-law spoke in a half-joking tone, not sounding like someone genuinely concerned. As I was about to retort, my mother-in-law said something unimaginable. Maybe it's better if the baby isn't born. Catherine, thank you. Thanks to you sacrificing yourself, it looks like my long-held dream will come true. Even after you leave the hospital, don't come back to our home. A monster as a daughter-in-law is a disgrace to the Johnson family. With that, she hung up. Sacrificing myself? Her long-held dream? I had a terrible feeling. If my suspicions were correct, my mother-in-law might have committed a grave crime. Since I became pregnant, I used to take about a 2-hour nap after lunch. If nothing had happened, maybe I would have been the one in the accident. Maybe my father-in-law had the same thought because he let out a deep sigh and held his head. He must have heard my mother-in-law's voice from the phone. No way. The father-in-law stood up and went outside to make a call. My stomach is tight and it hurts. I began to feel sick, and as I tried to head to the restroom, my vision blurred. I could see my brother rushing towards me, but I passed out. I went into labor due to the intense stress, and ended up giving birth a bit earlier than expected. It was a boy. With the fire, giving birth, and my husband's hospitalization, it was a nerve-wracking time. But I believe I made it through with the support of my parents, brother, and father-in-law. My husband had severe burns from the right side of his back to his neck and shoulder, and he had fractures from tumbling down the stairs, so he was hospitalized for about a month. During my husband's hospital stay, my mother-in-law never visited the hospital. The father-in-law had called my mother-in-law that day, but he didn't share the details of their conversation. Our second floor was completely destroyed in the fire. I'm currently at the hospital. I heard. Catherine got burns on her face? Bob's probably gonna be by her side during the hospitalization, right? Yeah, we're at Springfield General Hospital. You should come over right away. I can't bear to see it, so I'm not going to visit. I'm planning to stay with my sister for a while. Let me know when you find a temporary place to stay.
Wait. You are not planning on coming back?
Why should I? I can't do anything, and there's no house. It'll just cost money, right? With that, my mother-in-law truly never visited the hospital nor came to see the burnt house. My father-in-law must have wanted to believe in my mother-in-law. Without even telling her about the birth of their grandchild, he waited for her to come back on my mother-in-law's own, but his hopes were never realized. After my husband's discharge, to shed light on the fire and the mysterious words of my mother-in-law, the three of us, the father-in-law, my husband, and I, decided to confront her. Regardless of my mother-in-law's reasons, I couldn't forgive her words that implied it might have been better if our child wasn't born. I swore I'd make her regret it for the rest of her life. Soon after my husband was discharged, the four of us gathered in a room of the hotel my family runs. My mother led my mother-in-law into the room, and she seemed to give me a faint smile. Once my mother served tea and left the room, leaving me with my in-laws. Where's Bob? Bob stepped out for a bit, but he'll be back soon. My mother-in-law chuckled and said,
My condolences for your troubles.
With my face, neck, and right upper arm wrapped in bandages, I said nothing in response. Looking at my abdomen, my mother-in-law said,
Catherine, it was a shame about the baby. But maybe it was for the best. Maybe you should recover back at your parents' place.
Are you suggesting I divorce Bob?
It might be for the best. You no longer have a home to go back to, the baby didn't make it, and I bet it's awkward with the neighbors, isn't it?
No, I'm fine, really. I can move around and do chores just fine. Hearing this, my mother-in-law raised her voice in irritation.
For heaven's sake, understand the situation. A daughter-in-law with a face like that? You're embarrassing us. If you really care about Bob, you'd divorce him already. Hey! Enough is enough. It's just the way it is. You must be thinking the same thing, right? That you don't belong in the Johnson family. If my own mother was alive, she would have said the same thing.
My father-in-law looked shocked at her words. I see. So, it's really okay if we divorce?
Yes. It's for the best for both Bob and you.
Bob, seems like we should divorce. At my words, the doors at the back swiftly slid open. My mother-in-law shrieked upon seeing who was there. Standing there, wrapped in bandages just like me, was my husband.
Right? I feel terrible showing this hideous face to Catherine's parents. To you too, Mom, I must be an embarrassment to the Johnson family? What? No way! This is some kind of joke, right? There was only one person hospitalized. I checked. There was only one person sleeping in the bedroom.
My husband sat down beside me. We both started to unravel our bandages. Underneath mine was my unscarred face, but Bob's was still marred by burn scars even after a month.
Oh, Bob! Why? How did this happen?
That day, I got a call from my brother and wasn't at home. Just as I was leaving, feeling ill, Bob came home. It was Bob who was taken to the hospital.
That can't be! There were no shoes at the entrance.
I had put them away in the shoe rack. Bob's shoes are big, so I always organize them. My mother-in-law began to panic.
I'm so sorry. It's my fault for forgetting to turn off the stove. It's a big mistake. I'm thinking of resigning from my teaching job.
It was a decision my husband had made during his hospital stay. Because of the severe chill, my husband had been sleeping under the covers, and he couldn't remember if he had turned the stove on or off. It might have been because he was getting feverish and his consciousness was hazy.
No, it wasn't your fault. I was the one who lit the fire. I also turned on the heater and left the room. So please, don't quit your job as a teacher. My mother-in-law will scold me for sure.
My mother-in-law's face turned pale, and she started to tremble.
So, it was you who started the fire, mother-in-law? You wanted the blame to be on me? I didn't realize you despised me that much. All right, I'll divorce Bob, just like you want. What are you talking about? It's your fault Bob ended up like this. You better stay by his side and take responsibility.
Why is it my fault?
If you had been home that day, none of this would have happened.
My mother-in-law's words made no sense.
What was your long-time wish, mother-in-law? Was it to see me suffer? Did you set the fire because of that? I've always been jealous of you. You come from a wealthy background, graduated college, and even have a teaching license. My mother-in-law would probably love someone like you. I regretted about the baby, but I truly wanted you gone.
After her heated outburst, my mother-in-law said in a hushed tone,
More than anything, I wanted that house to burn down. She is still there, you know. She silently pressured me, watching from the shadows of the doors, the end of the hallway, and from the top of the stairs.
My mother-in-law's voice cracked with emotion. Could a person, even after death, still dominate someone this much? Cry of a baby. In the silence of the room, the distant cry of a baby echoed.
Wait, Catherine, is that?
Yes, it's our child.
I will never let you meet him.
My mother-in-law's expression vanished. Mom, I'm planning to divorce Catherine and then remarry her.
What do you mean?
When we remarry, I'm gonna drop the Johnson name.
No! Bob! No!
My mother-in-law let out a gut-wrenching scream. It seemed my mother-in-law's decades of emotions, imprisoned by fear, had erupted all at once. Even though the entire act had been orchestrated out of spite, the outcome left me with a heavy heart. My mother-in-law turned herself into the police, escorted by my father-in-law and my husband. Arson is a serious crime. I never intend to see my mother-in-law again. Still, I sincerely hope that with the burning of that house and the bamboo ruler, my mother-in-law's heart will find peace. My father-in-law had always known about the feud between his wife and his own mother, but chose to ignore it. He's decided to wait for my mother-in-law to come back, rather than divorcing her. As for my husband's declaration to my mother-in-law, he quit his teaching job. Now that his mother has admitted to arson, he believes he's no longer qualified to teach at school. Now he is involved in education as a tutor. We divorced once and got remarried, changing our last name from Johnson to my maiden name. We wanted to quickly sever ties with the name Johnson, which tormented my mother-in-law. Perhaps due to this incident, and with some thoughts of her own, my brother happily started his newlywed life with just him and his wife. We sold the land where my in-laws' house stood and moved to a new home we'd contracted with my father-in-law. We're talking about buying a house closer to my parents' place once our son gets a bit older. We're hoping we can move towards a happier future this time.